Welcome to this episode of Mysterial Experiences, where we delve into the heart of mystery and the ethereal. Today we invite you on a voyage through shadowed realms of the unexplained. From spectral whispers to cosmic enigmas. Join us as we explore tales and phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality, in a quest to uncover truths hidden in the fabric of the extraordinary. Prepare for a journey into the unknown, where each revelation is a step closer to unraveling the mysterious. Welcome back to another episode of Mysterial Experiences. I'm your host, as always, Mr. Josh Rutledge, and we've got my great, fantastic friend, I would say a brother, Mr. Stefan Gearhart with me here today. Welcome, Stefan.
Hey, glad to be here, Josh. It's weird to be on the other side of this.
I know. So for those who have found me, who was not aware of the previous podcast that I was a part of, it started its life as just Fearscape Podcast, then it became Fearscape Paranormal Podcast, then the Convergence Enigma with Josh and Stefan. And so if you're not familiar with that podcast, it ran for like 4.5 years. So I highly recommend go check out some of the episodes because they were a lot of great fun. We covered a lot of great topics. We interviewed a lot.
We survived COVID.
Yeah, we started before COVID, went all the way through COVID. Thank you to Zoom for doing a great job of providing a mechanism for podcasters to keep things going. But I have known Stefan since my sophomore year of high school, which was like 1995. And we have just been great friends ever since. And so I know that Stefan has a lot of great experiences. And so when I reached out to him to see about having him on, he said yes. So we're just going to talk to and get into a lot of his experiences that he's had and some that we have had together. And going to be a great conversation. So welcome again, Stefan.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. As you can see, we moved to Louisville recently from Phoenix, so my office space is still pretty empty. Don't have my books up. I miss it. I miss all my books.
Yeah, it's what's really funny is I've got bookshelves full of books, and a lot of them I haven't even read yet. I need to get on the ball, so to speak.
Yep.
But so jumping into it a little bit, I'll do an icebreaker with a experience that you and I had together, and then we can get into some other stuff. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So one of the what sits with me is one of the experiences that you and I had together was also with a friend, Naomi, who we met when we were at the radio station just starting up the Fearscape radio show, which was also a podcast kind of on the side at that point.
Yeah.
And we did a ghost investigation at a place called the Bardstown, and witnessed some, I don't think we ever really caught anything on camera or audio. Mm-hmm. We just had an amazing experience with some of the entities that were there. And the one that really stands out in my mind was when we were kind of in an upstairs theater area. There's a stage. You and Naomi were on stage. Naomi was talking psychically. You were solo on the Ouija board. I was in the audience area holding dowsing rods. And that was really my first experience with dowsing rods. And it was just an amazing, she was getting questions, you were getting answers on the Ouija board, and I was getting energy stuff happening on the dowsing rods. It was just an amazing experience.
It was a good triumvirate. Naomi's pretty cool, man. And going solo on the Ouija board, I don't know. I just felt like I needed to. Mm-hmm. I was just getting answers left and right. I don't know how much of that was, me psychically projecting the answers. They were using my brain and my hands or what, or if it was just straight Ouija. Couldn't tell you,
All I
but
know is I looked up several times and you were just like moving all over the place,
it was going so fast,
almost
man.
faster than you could possibly, you could potentially even read,
Hmm.
what was being spelled out. So that, in my mind, makes it think that, your hands were doing the spelling, but your mind was really receiving the word,
Yeah.
before it was kind of being spelled out. So,
The word of God.
but I mean, it's unfortunate that the person who came along as the photographer was passed out, and we didn't get any of it on film. But
Yeah, they were asleep the whole time.
yeah, but it was still a great experience, and it's in my own personal journey. It's certainly one that I kind of rank pretty high in my kind of initiatory experiences of what has led me to be on this kind of journey and path that I'm on right now. We've had others together, but I know that you've had some that predate the one that I just mentioned, as well as some others that we've not had together. So, just anything that you want to share?
Sure, I've had paranormal experiences dating back to my first memories. I mean, I can't remember a time where psychic, ghost, alien stuff what hadn't occurred. I mean, it's just always been a part of my life. And one of the earliest memories I have was moving in with my dad, and me, my sister, and my brother. I was 5. My sister was 3 or 4. I think she was just turning 4, and my brother was 10 or 11. And we had moved in with my dad, and so the three of us moved into one bedroom together. So we had 2 bunk beds. Tommy, my brother, had the top bunk. Trisha had the bottom bunk, and I switched.
Hmm.
But Dad had built this bunk bed, and the bar hadn't been put on there yet. And anybody that knows me knows that I toss and turn all night long.
Yeah.
And I tossed and turned off that top bunk a number of times onto the floor. There's even an experience where apparently I hit so hard I blacked out. They took me to the doctor. I woke up the next morning and didn't remember any of it. Woke up with like gauze on my nose and everything. And like, what happened? So I had no idea. But there was one night that I felt myself fall, and it woke me up. And then I felt some hands underneath my back, push me back up onto the bed.
Mm.
And as I'm being pushed up onto the bed, I look over and I can see my sister staring at whatever it is that's pushing me up onto the bed. And and the next morning, Trisha says to me, she says, the man that lives here with us is the one that pushed you up onto your bed last night. He says he doesn't like it when you fall. And now my sister has always had extreme psychic gifts. She's a medium. She can see and speak to spirits. I mean, you've met her. We had her on Fear Escape a couple times, and she's incredible. And a lot of my childhood experience directly involved Trisha and her gifts. But what's interesting is a few years later, so I had to be 8 or 9. We went to the library. We had discovered the archives room.
Yeah.
And so we were checking out the archives, and we wanted to look up the history of our house. And so we did all the stuff. We were on microfiche and all this stuff. And my brother finds this story about when our house had just been built. So it was a 2-story duplex, and we had people that lived upstairs of us. Occasionally Dad would rent it out until we had his friend's mom move in, and she kind of became like a nanny figure to us. But anyways, there was a back door, and then there were steps that went down the back door. If you wanted to go out the back door, it went to the outside. Well, this story talks about it that in the 20s or 30s, the owner that had built the house hadn't quite built the steps yet. He had built this house so that his senile, as they called it then, his senile father lived upstairs in the apartment, and I guess he had opened up the back door and walked out the back door and fell to his death because it was a cement slab, and fell to his death. And there was a picture of him of what he looked like, and Trisha immediately says, Stefan, that's the guy that lives with us. That's the guy that pushed you back up on your bed.
Wow.
And I hadn't even remembered that experience until she had said it, that had happened. And I freaked out, couldn't believe it. And it was an old man, and that makes sense why he didn't want me to fall,
Yeah.
because he had fallen to death himself. So I always thought that was really, really interesting.
Yeah. I
So
mean, that
that was
is,
crazy.
well, what's really interesting about the whole thing is that, like you said, he was preventing you from having an experience that he had that led to his death. It really makes you wonder if, let's say that a spirit died during a car wreck. If they were with someone when they experienced, actions that were going to lead to a car crash, would they interfere or interject to try to prevent it from happening and try
Right.
to prevent the same outcome? You know, um, I think you actually didn't you have something like that where a spirit was in your back seat? You were driving along and you had a spirit in your back seat or something, and you felt like they corrected the wheel.
Yeah, I don't really remember. I've had so many
Yeah,
experiences at this point. I don't recall much of what happened there. But
but yeah,
another one that happened when I was a kid that I also got pudding on, which is what we call proof. Proof is in the
right.
pudding.
Proof in the pudding.
That I got some pudding on was I had an abusive step grandfather that lived with us for a while, and I had gone through a horrible series of abuses that day, and the last one was towards bedtime. Don't need to get into that; it doesn't
Mm,
matter. And I was laying in my bed at this point. I was like, I think I was 12, 11 or 12, because the bedroom was mine at that point. Tommy, we had created a bedroom downstairs in the basement for Tommy, and Trisha actually moved upstairs into the other bedroom with where the nanny was. And so I had my own bedroom for a little bit. And I was laying in the bed and I was facing the door, and there was the light from the bathroom coming in, and I was crying because I just got whooped,
yeah.
and really bad. And I was crying, and I started praying. I grew up Catholic, and I started praying, and I blinked, and I opened my eyes, and there in front of me was this woman. The best way I could say it is I could see through her. She was glowing blue
Mm,
to me. I thought it was a guardian angel or Mary,
mm,
or something along those lines. I didn't know what it was, but I was staring at her, and she gave me, and I'll never forget that. I looked her right in the eyes, and she gave me this look of, "You could see me." Like, that's
mm.
exactly the look that it was. And then I blinked, and she was gone. So it was like blink, blink. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it
Couple of
wasn't that
seconds.
long,
Yeah.
but it was this feeling of comfort that I had overwhelmed me, and all this stuff. I never told anyone except for my fifth grade teacher, who was a nun, Sister Mary Patrick. I immediately, when I went to school the next day, told her about it, and she immediately told me not to tell anyone about it.
Huh.
And that it was my guardian angel, and that I needed to be thankful for my guardian angel. This was the 80s. They didn't do
Yeah.
anything about abuse back then. And so,
Or if
she
they
just
did,
said,
they just turned a blind eye to it.
right. And, but she told me that was my guardian angel and to keep praying to my guardian angel. So fast forward many, 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 many years later, I had to be probably 28, 29 years old, and maybe even 30. Can't remember. I was living in old Louisville, and my friend Cindy um, said she had a medium that she had hired and wanted us all to do a seance together.
Mhm.
And I was like, hell yeah, let's do a seance. And so we had, her name was Barbara. She ended up becoming a mentor of mine for tarot and other things years later, oddly enough. That's a whole nother story. I ended up working with her daughter at a job, didn't even know it was her daughter, and her and I had become friends. And then I went to dinner with her daughter. We all went out to eat, and she's like, "Hey, is it okay if my mom comes?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and it was Barbara. And so,
Was it,
yeah,
what they say, it's a big little world or something like that, right?
yeah, it was crazy. But anyways, so we're doing the seance, and we're getting towards the end, and she says, "Oh, Stefan, there's someone here for you. It's your Aunt Kathy." I'm like, "Oh, cool," because my dad had a sister that drowned before I was born.
Mm,
And I hadn't said anything to Barbara. So the fact that she said Aunt Kathy
right.
was beautiful. Like, this is not something I talked about on social media. And Barbara was like 80 years old. She was not on social media. This was just absolutely amazing that she was able to pull that
Right.
out of the air. And so we're talking, and she's talking about how much, she's always been with me, which I had heard before from other psychics that I had. That my aunt was surrounding me and always protecting me, and there was like a special connection between us two and all this stuff. And then she goes, "Oh," Barbara says, "Oh, she wants to know if you saw her." And I said, "What do you mean? I've never seen her." She said, "No, when you were a kid, there was a point you were crying, and you looked up, and she swears you saw her." And I turned white.
Mm,
And I was like, "Oh my God, that was her." And again, I never told anybody
right.
about this. The only
Yeah.
person I ever told was Sister Mary Patrick. And I never told my sister. I never told my girlfriend at the time. I never told Santosh, my best friend at the time. I didn't tell anybody about that experience. That was like something, because I had kind of written it off. And
Right.
here it was. And she's saying, "Did you see me? There was a night you were crying." I mean, these are things that were so on the spot. I mean, this
Right.
Barbara was one of the most incredible mediums I'd ever met in my entire life. And that was putting to me. And I said, "Yes, yes, I did. That was you."
Mm,
And Barbara said, "Yeah, she couldn't believe that you actually saw her." And that made sense to me, the way that she had looked at me,
right.
that I had looked at her. And that was one of those moments where I 100% believed in ghosts and afterlife spirits and things like that, because there was no one that knew this but Sister Mary
Right.
Patrick. She was gone. I'd never talked about it, never shared it on social media, never done any of that. This medium is telling me this. She knew it was my Aunt Kathy. She knew the situation and everything. And it was something I had thought about quite a lot, because I could still see that image burned in my head. Like,
Yeah.
and it's crazy to me that happened. And that was like the biggest piece of pudding to ever happen to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's like you said, that's definitely a pudding moment. Because no one else knew, and here's somebody that, I mean, even if let's say that she was able to psychically pull it out of you, that still would be a pudding moment in,
Yeah.
she was able to get that out of you psychically. But I mean, of all the things she could have pulled from you psychically, why pick that one?
Why
So,
pick that one that was in
right.
the recesses of my brain from when
Right.
I was a kid?
So yeah, I mean, it definitely, yeah, like you said, solidified for you the kind of existence of ghosts.
And just like you said, and it solidified just the paranormal in general,
Right.
psychic, anything. Just like you said, because even if she pulled that out of my head, she pulled that out of my head. So
Right. She
either
went
way, either ghosts are real or psychic stuff is real, or both.
right,
So
or a combination of the two.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's for me, one of the experiences for me that solidified that ghosts were real was I was younger, staying with my grandparents, and a neighbor of theirs. She was really old, and she was in the hospital. And her husband had passed some years before, and my grandparents and I went to see her at the hospital. And when we came back to my grandparents' house later in the evening, it was dark, but there was a rocking chair that sat in the what they used as a dining room. And when we came back home, that rocking chair was rocking. not like just barely rocking, like, a gentle breeze, like
Yeah.
full on somebody sitting there rocking that rocking chair. And we just interpreted it as it was Miss Wilburn's husband, saying, thanks for going to check on my wife. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's one of those things where I am an analytical person at heart, but some of this stuff is so, could I create a rational explanation? Sure, but it would have so many holes in it that at that point in time, it's just as plausible as saying it was a spirit rocking the chair, right?
Right.
So, but
Why
yeah,
not?
right.
Why
Why
not?
not?
That's the one thing I have issues with in terms of skeptics, and you and I have always talked about this, was that if a skeptic says, well, it could have been this, therefore it negates everything in their opinion, because it very well could have been the wind, even though it wasn't windy.
Right.
But the fact that it could have been the wind means, therefore, in their opinion, it negates the fact that it was a ghost. But yet, if we were to say it could not have been the wind, why does that not negate the fact that it,
Right.
whatever, or what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say?
Yeah.
Like,
And I encounter this quite a bit with several different people that just, um, for whatever reason, to accept the possibility of the unknown pushes against their own kind of personal boundaries of where they're willing to go in the expanse of what they don't understand.
yeah,
And I think that's probably true for most skeptics or even hardcore non-believers. To acknowledge that an unknown solution is an answer uh, brings into question too many other things in their life that they're unwilling to broach that subject at this time.
yep,
And so it's really not even a question of belief versus non-belief. It's a question of, are you willing to dive into the recesses of your reality to understand what it means to be you?
right.
So,
And I'm like, one word that I hate, well, one term that I hate more than anything is group hysteria.
hmm,
Group hysteria is ridiculous. And like the fact that I experienced something with more than one person on many occasions speaks volumes to me. Like our
yeah.
UFO experience that we had.
I mean,
We both saw that.
right. Well, I mean, when you think about it from a witness perspective, right? If I want to get witnesses for an event that occurred, more witnesses are better,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm going to get their telling of the situation, and hopefully there's going to be elements of their telling of the situation that are going to jive with other people's tellings of the situation. I mean, that's like investigation 101.
Yeah.
Separate your witnesses, get their stories, and evaluate them to see if there are consistencies in what they saw. So to take the same and say, but unless we apply that to paranormal, then it's mass hysteria. That, from a logical perspective, that doesn't jive with me. And
Mm-mm.
I just don't understand. Again, I think the person who is unwilling to explore the nature of their reality will always find a reason why it can't be whatever, right?
Yep.
They'll always, because it's like holes on a ship. They're constantly going to find something to plug those holes with to keep the ship from sinking.
Mm-hmm.
And even if the thing that they find is a dead rat in the corner, they're still going to use it because it plugs that hole, and they don't have to think about that hole right now because it's now plugged and they don't have to think about it. So the best explanation for them may be the worst argument against, but for them, that's all that matters because they don't have to worry about that anymore. They've come up with a solution, a reason, an example, whatever, that solidifies for them in their own mind why it can't be this, so they're safe to move on now in their experience of reality.
Yep. 100%.
Um, but yeah, I mean, to your example, the experience that you and I had in my backyard in Kentucky, with the light, it's I've told that story several times on the Convergence Enigma, and I think I've told it on a couple of interviews, but I don't know if I've ever told it on this podcast before. But it was um, May, I want to say around Memorial Day. I think we were maybe getting together on the long weekend or something, and we were doing a bonfire in my backyard. I had a fire pit on 1 acre. Was wooded behind us. It was perfect setting for sitting out late at night and looking at the stars.
Yep.
And we were standing, or rather, we saw a light in the northeastern part of the sky, kind of tracking along. And you would shine a green laser pointer in front of it. We never shined it at anything because you never know if it's a plane or whatever. But you would shine it in front of it, and each time that you did, it would glow. But the glow was like what I equate to like a lighthouse. The way the light comes
Yeah.
around, that it gets brighter and then it goes out. And it was probably about maybe 15 to 20 degrees off the horizon, moving across the sky. Definitely didn't feel like it was a satellite. Definitely felt lower in elevation and altitude than a satellite. But we just kind of watched it track, and each time, like you said, I flashed the light and it would flash back at us, and we tracked it until we didn't see it anymore. But
Yep.
we stood there staring at that kind of general area of the sky to see if it would come back. And then you happen to look over your left shoulder, and above an oak tree in my backyard, to give an idea of how high in the sky it was just over the oak tree,
Well, I
was,
had felt the hair on the back of my neck
yeah,
stand up,
like something's
and I'm
looking
always worried Sasquatch was coming out them woods. I'm
at
not gonna
yeah.
lie. I'm
Yeah, I
not
mean,
gonna lie.
those woods always felt a little eerie anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Which I did find out later on that there was like an abandoned house in those woods. So, but anyways, so you see this bright light, you poke me, I turn around, I look at it. It's this bright, hovering light just above this large oak tree, maybe, 75 to 100 feet in the air, easily as bright as a full moon.
Yeah, I
Um,
was gonna say it was like the size of a softball.
yeah. And we watched it for a few seconds, and then it just shot straight up in the air, kind of leaving this conical white streak behind it. And then it was gone. And we never, I don't think, had anything else happen that night after that experience.
Mm-mm.
Um, but yeah, two people saw the exact same thing. Um, witnessed the events leading up to it, had the same experience. And I mean, I think we even went inside and did some Estes stuff, Estes method things in my basement after it got a little chilly outside. So, yeah, I mean, that's another phenomenal experience, and probably one of my best UFO experiences that I've
Yep,
ever had.
mine too.
So, I mean, I think that, and it's something that I've been saying for a long time, and really the kind of the premise of the start of this podcast is that we have these experiences all the time. You have them your entire life. I'm beginning to find out that I have had many my entire life as well, that I've repressed or for whatever reason. But the bottom line is we have these things all the time, and like the person in your sister Mary Patrick, I think was which said her name was, not wanting you to tell anybody about your guardian angel. That kind of feeds that same kind of taboo of it's not okay to talk about these things. And we let the skeptics and the non-believers of the world who are willing to say, well, it can't be that because it could be this, kind of rule and govern what we're allowed to talk about these experiences that happen to us.
Yeah.
And I think that it's time for that taboo to go away, and for
I've
us to,
said that forever. I wish people would be more brave. There's even, but I get it though. I mean, it's like I had um, an abduction experience when I was a kid that I still am not comfortable talking about in public. I don't share with too many people about it,
I
and
mean,
so I get it, but at the same
yeah,
time, I'm like, the other stuff I'm comfortable about, ghosts and all that stuff, and psychic stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'll talk
right.
about it like it ain't nobody's business. But yeah, I wish there wasn't a taboo.
Well, it's just like, I can openly talk to you and everyone who's listening to this show about my psychic experiences and my channeling experiences and such. But I don't talk about it with my workmates
Yeah,
because I don't know if it's going to change the way that they view or think about me, or if it's going to jeopardize my job.
right.
So it's in the same token, it's interesting how these are all out there for public record. If anybody were to stumble across it, they would see it. But for some reason, that doesn't bother me as much as direct communication with one
Yeah.
another about, hey, by the way, I'm channeling on Friday night. It's just not for whatever reason. It's like I draw that line, and I think it's because of, for me at least, it's because of that taboo that surrounds everything. I concerned about whether or not it would mean they would not want me as an employee because of it.
Right, or how it would affect, my daughter as she gets older,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. I really encourage my kids to keep the magic alive. To really think about the possibility of fairies and gnomes and elves and Sasquatch and UFO, et cetera, to keep all of that alive in them, because I think so many of us as adults, we come a time in our child life that we start to suppress those things or whatever. And then later on in our adult lives, basically when we're at a point, I think around middle age, when we realize that we really don't give a flying Rasputin, what people think about us, we start to embrace those things again. Well, I don't want my kids to go through that 20-year period of not knowing the magic of the world.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, but also I don't want them to be teased and bullied about it either.
Right. Yeah,
So
that's the other side. It's like, yeah, you can convince some people, but it's the rest of the people that's the problem.
right, but I think for me, what it boils down to is something that our really good friend Chris, the theologian, says is, you're letting those people live rent free in your mind. And so, how many random people who may have a difficulty with some of the things that I'm interested in am I going to let govern how I interact with reality? And I would hope that I would pass that frame of thinking on to my kids so that they realize that as long as they're happy in life, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think about it all the time. I mean, my daughter's 2, and I think about it all the time about, sharing this stuff with her and what all that's going to be and
Yeah,
mean and what's she going to think about daddy being into the paranormal because,
yeah.
I don't plan on hiding that from her.
I mean,
So,
it's a part of yourself, right?
mhm.
So, um, any other stories or experiences that you feel like sharing?
Yeah, so I've had a few interesting UFO experiences too. Obviously, the abduction story I won't share, not yet, anyways. But years after that, so that happened when I was 3 or 4. Had to be 6 or 7, and I had woke up outside after a 4th of July. At least I think I had woken. I either fell asleep outside or I woke up outside. I still don't know. I have no idea. But it was late, 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 well after fireworks because everybody was gone. I mean, this was
Right.
probably 4 in the morning because it was quiet. I remember waking up and it was quiet. And people be blasting fireworks till
Oh
like
yeah,
2 in the morning.
2 in the morning.
Yeah. So it was after that and it was still pitch dark. And I'm laying there and I'm looking up at the stars, and 4 stars come down and get closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. And I can feel wind rushing everywhere, almost like it was a helicopter. but it was much bigger than that. I mean, it covered my whole house. 4 lights in a square came down.
Mm.
And then, just like our experience, it shot off back into the air. And I could see the absence of the stars behind it. So it was like a black box almost, not like a Borg cube. I couldn't see what was above it or anything, but definitely because it had 4 right in the corners. So right in the corners were the lights, white lights, and came down. And I remember that, and I remember whatever it was, I fell back asleep on the lawn because I woke up the next morning still on the lawn. So that was definitely strange, but that has always stuck with me.
Stuck with you.
That was what I consider my first UFO experience, since most of my addiction stuff was repressed memories that I don't 100% trust.
Right.
This I remember without hypnotherapy or anything like that. This I remember very clearly. And I remember waking up in the lawn, and I got in trouble for sleeping out in the front yard. Like, I remember that too. I got in trouble for sleeping out there. So that's what makes me think I must have woken up in the front yard. I don't sleepwalk. So
you sleep whirl, but
yeah.
sleep
I don't
toss,
sleep.
but yeah.
I sleep talk, I sleep toss, but I do not walk.
Yeah.
So that happened. And then, of course, Phoenix, I had in Arizona when I lived there, I had 2 crazy experiences. One on Christmas night, when I was walking my dog Kenobi, I was walking him, and I just look up at the stars, and I see a triangle shape moving across the sky, 3 lights in a triangle moving, and then it started rotating like a Ferris wheel as it was moving. So I thought that was really weird. And then all the lights converged into one light, and again shot straight up into the air, and then dissipated, was gone. So it went this way, then this way. And I don't know anything that can do that.
Yeah.
So
I don't think of it. I don't think that's a drone possibility in my mind.
And if it would have been a helicopter, it means it would have been close, and I would have heard it.
Heard it, yeah.
And a helicopter does not have 3 lights that go.
Yeah. Were they white, green, blue?
White. They were white. And then, if you'll recall, I had shared on Fearscape, I had shared the story of coming back from the Grand Canyon while I was driving, and saw a series of lights, like a step ladder. There was one like so, and I'm just watching them because I love constellations, and that was not a constellation that I was aware of, and it was there for a long time, and then all of a sudden it went pew pew, pew, and all 5 were gone. And I'm trying to wake up everybody in the car to see if they saw it, but no, of course every single person in the car was asleep because it was late at night. And out in the desert, I mean, you can see a lot of stars.
You can see a lot.
So, but those
were far off too. So
that's just a couple stories.
Well, if I could, one that I recall that happened to both of us is we had driven out towards Lake Pleasant, and we're sitting on the side of the road doing Estes stuff. For anybody who's listening who doesn't know what Estes is, because I think I mentioned it once before, it's a method that was devised by a guy named Connor Randall and Carl. I can't remember Carl's last name. What is
Pfeiffer.
it? Pfeiffer. Yes, thank you. They were regular ghost investigators at a hotel called the Stanley in Colorado, and they came up with this method. It basically uses a ghost box, spirit box, that cycles through radio stations. The difference is that they kind of block out their senses. So they put an eye mask on, they put headphones over their ears, they run the radio up through earbuds to their ears. And so they're kind of blocking off those senses, of those other senses, to be able to really focus on kind of the third eye and the hearing and just kind of picking up on what's being said. And so you and I had done, we've done several of those sessions over the years. But we were doing one out near Lake Pleasant because that's where my wife and I had seen a UFO, which she rationalizes away, plugging that hole in that sinking ship. But we were out there, and this was a very pudding moment. You were doing the S's session, and I'm going to struggle to remember exactly what was said, but you said something like, "It's coming on the
Yeah,
right."
I was channeling. I had channeled at that
You
point.
slipped into channeling.
Yep,
Yeah.
I was channeling.
And so you said it's coming on the right. And as soon as you said that, a car flew past us on the right hand side of the vehicle. And there were a couple other times in that session where I would ask questions. And again, you've got headphones on, earbuds in, you can't hear me. I'm asking questions. You're giving responses to those questions. So for me, from a channeling perspective, Estes perspective, that was a pudding moment.
Yeah, and I believe we have that recorded too. Don't we
We
have
do.
that on video
We've got all
somewhere?
that stuff either recorded or on video somewhere. We comes. It's a matter of of putting it all together for publication. But yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, that was
um,
crazy. That was, yep, when I was channeling Jericho, is what he called himself.
yeah,
And yeah, I remember you telling me that a car had come by right when I think it was to the left because I think you were in the driver's seat is what it was. I can't remember, but I remember you telling me, "Holy crap!"
yeah,
Right? I mean, literally a second, like not like a minute or
yeah,
30 seconds. Literally on your right or left or whatever, it's coming.
yeah,
Boom, car.
yeah. It was very much a short distance, like a short time span. Yeah,
Hmm.
it wasn't like I'm going to be coming later, and then 30 minutes later there was a car that drove by. This was very much a statement of an occurrence that was happening at the time that it was happening.
Hmm.
So,
And I love stuff like that. I love psychic new age experiences. I mean, that's part of my spirituality and has been for 25 years,
mhm,
just that you can find healing in that, much like someone can find healing in God or
mhm,
Christianity or whatever. I find healing in a psychic that can reach into my mind and say, that was your Aunt Kathy,
right, yeah,
that's able to say, hey, I can see this, I can see that. That's why I read tarot. I've been reading tarot for 25 years. And Santosh and I, our friend Santosh that does Astral Stew with us, him and I coined the term therapy a long time ago.
mhm,
That tarot is more than telling the future. It's therapy. It's
yeah,
getting into what's going on in here. Divination does that, and so does anything psychic like that. New
mhm.
Age, it 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 hits in a different place than other religions hit. It's interesting.
Well, I think that all for the most part, people who seek out those experiences, religious experiences, etc. It's all from a place of just wanting to know that you're not alone, right? There's some bigger thing than you that at least at a minimum has your back.
Yeah.
Um,
And
it-
sadly, just like any major religion, they're charlatans, even
yeah,
in New Age,
right,
which God knows there's a million documentaries on cult leaders,
right.
New Age cult leaders on
Yeah, and
Netflix,
so sometimes that willing and or willingness and wantingness to be a part of something bigger can get us in trouble if we don't,
Mhm.
kind of trust our gut on, the things that are yelling at us saying, "Hey, this is not a good idea."
Yeah,
Um,
that's why I say, don't trust faith alone. Find those pudding moments,
mhm,
true pudding moments that that there's no way it could happen. Like we've said before, it's like have a friend that's involved. See how psychic your channels are. Can they see a tarot card that I've set down
Right.
2,000 miles away, because that's searching for a pudding moment. Maybe they're not psychic, so there's that as well. But finding something like that to see if you can find pudding, like those are those moments that really, Christians do it all the time, to find proof for their faith. We can do the same thing with the paranormal, try to find
Mm.
that proof. I mean, you know, that's why
Yeah.
the people that are into the paranormal, 90% of them are so deep into the paranormal is because they've had so many pudding moments.
Right. It's not an offensive thing to
Mhm.
ask whatever it is or that you're interacting with to do something to prove their existence, their good nature,
Mhm.
whatever the case may be.
Yep.
If they truly want to be heard, then they'd be able to do so. So,
Yeah. I
but
mean, I tell you, man, like one of my claimed psychic gifts is what I call ghost empathy or spirit empathy. Like I can't see them, I can't talk to them, but I can feel them because
mm,
sometimes I'll be alone and I'll be overwhelmed with an emotion that's not mine and I don't know where it's coming from.
mm,
And I've learned that it's a spirit that's interacting with me that I can feel.
mm,
And that's why my sister and I work really well together because she can see and speak to them, but to her, it's more like a text. It comes across
mm,
without emotion, and yet I can pick up on that. Or when we do the Ouija board together, I can pick up on what they're trying to say through that
yeah.
text because I can feel it. And I've had that pudding with my sister many times where she'll say, ooh, he said he's angry. And I was already feeling angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yep, yep.
Yeah, that's like I had an experience just a few weeks ago. I was in California. Was in an unfortunate event where I wasn't able to be with my family, but when we were on vacation, and I was in a hotel room, and I kept feeling like something was in the hotel room, and so I used a tarot deck that I had on me to try to get some information and answers on what it was. And I really got a strong feeling like, and the tarot cards indicated this, that whatever it was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked for a name, and immediately a name popped into my head, like a full name. And so I later did a Google search and came across an exact person that meets the all the same criteria that was given to me, by this entity that I was interacting with. She had said that her mom had died and her sister had died, and she was ready to move on. And the article that I found that talked about this murder of this person, again, same first and last name, also mentioned that her mom had died. And just a week before the printing of the article, her sister had died. This was all from 2021. So, I mean, it was,
Mm-hmm.
those are the pudding moments, like you say,
Yep.
that you speak of. So,
Yep.
yeah.
And I will tell you, I've had more pudding moments as a paranormal new age junkie than I ever did as a Catholic.
Mm.
And, I'm not saying that Catholics or Christians don't have their
Right.
thousands of pudding moments. Good for them. But I know that this is the path I'm supposed to be on
Mhm.
because I've had more proof than I could ever ask for. And I
Well, and
continue to have those
I think we've
moments.
talked about it before, but that's what pudding is to me. It's the guidepost on the side of the road that lets you know that you're on the right path.
Yep.
It's just that reassurance. So, well, we've been going for about an hour, and I try to keep these things around an hour. So, before we get off the horn, though, is there anything that you got coming up, if you want to plug? Or I know that my listeners are spread mostly around the country, some around the world, but maybe they'll make an opportunity to get to something you're doing in Louisville or anything else. Anything you want to plug?
I'm sure. You can always check out my TikTok at the Astro Pope. I've got some music stuff that I love that I do that's on there, comedy, it's just dumb stuff. But if you come across that, look at the pinned ones, much the stuff I love to sing, check those out. Make those viral. But no, the big thing that I do is improv comedy. I teach with a school called Improv 502, and that's in Louisville, Kentucky. And we are always having classes going on. And if you're interested in doing improv and you're in the Louisville area, hit us up. Let us, see if we're doing anything. And we have starter classes for newbies or people that don't want to perform. Our level 1 class doesn't have a performance slot, so you're not forced into performing
Mhm.
or anything like that. So it's a lot of fun. Other than that, that's really about it. That's
Well,
what's
and
going on with me.
we've got a show that you and I still do with our friend Santosh
Hmm.
called Astral Stew, and you can find
Yes.
that on if you go to YouTube and look for Another Realm Media, or I think it's also on all the podcast platforms. Astral
Yep.
Stew, STEW, and we just talk about all kinds of. I mean, some of the stuff we've talked about here today, as well as a bunch of other things. It's not so much experience based as it is just talking around the possibilities of what
Yeah.
is that we don't know about.
What
So,
is and what ifs. Yep.
right.
I love Astral Stew.
So again, that's on YouTube at Another Realm Media or Astral Stew on all the podcast players. So thank you
Yep.
again, Stefan, for
Yeah, I
coming
appreciate you
on
having
today.
me
This has
out,
been
man.
a great conversation, and I miss doing the other podcast with you. And so this is a little bit of an itch scratch for me. So
Yep, our good buddy in the UK will be glad to hear us working together again.
yeah. So, also one last thing, and not to bring to light anything about what you just said. I'm not trying to make fun of any of it, but when you talk about the person you saw when you were a kid that kind of appeared blue, the image I saw in my head was like the Star Wars Force
Yes.
ghost
Mhm.
kind of image. And so, for
Yep.
anybody
Force
who's
Ghost.
listening, that's kind of what I pictured. So.
That's perfect example of what it looked like.
Okay. So
Yep.
thank you again. Thank you, everyone who's listening. If you have experiences, if you would like to either share them on the show, come on the show and talk about them, send them to me. You can do so at Josh Rutledge at mysterialexperiences.com. Please remember to favorite this, to like it, to subscribe if you're on YouTube, whatever the case may be, and share it with anybody who you think could benefit from hearing this show or any show that I've done previously. Thank you again for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.